What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down this Monday Night Football Showdown slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. It looks like we have a bit of a lopsided game here with the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders in an NFC East showdown. 43.5 point over-under, which isn't that great. And we also have a 10.5 point spread in the Eagles' favor. Potential MVP candidate Jalen Hurts taking on Taylor Heinicke. So I'm expecting this to be a pretty one-sided affair here, but we've been surprised before on showdown slates, so I won't say anything for certain. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. And if you guys do want access to the spreadsheet that I'm showing you guys for free on YouTube, link is down below in the description or in the pinned comment. I also cover the NBA each and every single day in a similar fashion, but we got projections, cheat sheets, optimizers, ownership projections, Discord community, all that fun stuff. Link can be found down below. But anyway, let's talk about these two. We have Jalen Hurts, 12-2 on DK, 17-5 on FanDuel. Taylor Heinicke's coming in at a pretty fair price point. $9,000 for a quarterback always doesn't seem too bad. Plus, fantasy point-wise, in his 3 starts this year, we're talking like 14, 15, and I want to say 23, which it's not bad given the price point. I can't argue that. It's just a brutal matchup versus the Eagles on the road. But let's talk about Jalen Hurts here first. Not that you guys need me to tell you that he's a good play. Obviously, he's going to be the most popular option on the slate, whether it's the flex spot or the captain spot. And talking quarterbacks for showdowns in the captain spot is always kind of interesting because if they're a pocket passer, as I always say, I try to tend towards using their pass catching options. Like if we have Tom Brady on the slate, I'd rather play Godwin or Mike Evans or whoever it may be in the captain spot. But if we have guys like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, just to name a couple off the top of my head, I'm fine with them in the captain spot because they can get the job done by themselves on the ground. And while Jalen Hurts hasn't really done too much damage on the ground the past 3 weeks, he did have 9 carries in 2 of those games, but yardage-wise just hasn't really added up to too much. Overall this season, he's been great on the ground. We're talking just about a rushing or passing touchdown floor per game with what he can do with his legs, 42 rushing yards per game, which equates to 4 points. 8 design carries per game. That does not include scrambles, close to a rushing touchdown. I mean, whenever they're on the goal line, he's always going to be a threat to score. And while they don't throw the ball too much, he's been very efficient this season, over an 81% completion percentage and 8.5 yards per attempt. And obviously, as I always say, I mean, the addition of A.J. Brown's been absolutely huge for this offense. And it's a good matchup versus the Commanders to boot. I mean, 25th DVA versus the pass. And bottom half in the league, DVA-wise, or I should say fantasy point-wise, versus quarterback. So no real reason to not like Jalen Hurts here. Maybe you're concerned about the massive spread here, but if they're going to blow out Washington, well, Jalen Hurts has to be a part of that, and it's not really something you can worry about too much on a showdown slate because we cannot get too picky. Taylor Heinicke here, the only reason you're playing him is because of the price point, but to be honest, if you look at the projections here, I currently have Hurts sitting at just over 24, which is 2x value. Then I have Heinicke, while he's a lot cheaper, talking just under 13.5 points, and that's only 1.5x. So he's not a must-play by any means, but at his price point, I certainly understand getting him in the flex spot here and there for sure. If you're going to captain him, that's extremely risky. Only a large field tournament play. I'm someone that plays 1 to 3 max a lot. Although in showdowns, I do dabble into the 150s, so I'll try to get some Heinicke exposure as far as that is concerned. But brutal matchup on the road here versus the Eagles, second DVA versus the pass, and allowing the second fewest points per game to the quarterback position. So I'd be kind of concerned here with Heinicke. He is merely a price play at a position where these guys are normally not this cheap. And moving over to the lineup, I know we're getting crazy here. We're going to go Jalen Hurts in the captain spot. A.J. Brown is very interesting there because you're saving about $3,000. If we have to switch that around, sure, we'll go for it. But as of right now, let's just plug in Jalen Hurts in the captain spot, and we'll move on from there. And looking at the ball carriers here, we'll start with the Philadelphia Eagles here first. And pretty much a 2-man show, although Boston Scott will get mixed in here and there. He saw just under 10% of the snaps last week. But we have Miles Sanders, $9,800, and we have Kenneth Gainwell at $4,600. Pretty much expecting a 60-40, 70-30 split for the most part here. And really, whoever has the hotter hand, we could see the increase or decrease depending on. But Miles Sanders is going to be the main back here. If looking at the touches so far this season, also it does profile very well for Miles Sanders as a 10.5 point favorite at home, high implied team total. I'd say there's a decent chance he can find the end zone here. But anyway, on the season, over 16 carries per game, about 3/4 of rushing touchdown per game, and close to 5 yards per carry on 80 rushing yards. He's been pretty solid, just not that involved in the passing game, seeing under 2 targets per game. And the Commanders been a bit easier to pass on this season than run on. They are second DVA versus the run and 12th fewest in points allowed per game to the running back position and only 85 rushing yards per game. So I wouldn't say it's the best matchup on the ground for these Eagles backfield, but as 10.5 point favorites, I mean, you really kind of have to look past that a little bit because if they are leading, they will just have to run the ball near the end of the game. And looking at Kenneth Gainwell, his opportunities this year, it's nothing too abundant. I wish he was a little bit cheaper than $4,600 because he's the guy that's only seeing 1.5 targets per game and just over 3 carries. It's not like he's the guy that's usually going to get you around double-digit opportunities. And since I kind of view him as more of the pass catcher in this scenario, with them being 10.5 point favorites, I don't think that really profiles too well for him. And just looking at the projections here, I'm not sure if you guys can see them on your screen, but I only have him around 4.8 points. That's 1x value. It looks like, honestly, the worst play running back of all these players here. So it's probably going to be Miles Sanders or bust for me from the Eagles backfield. Then moving on to the Commanders, I have a little bit more interest here because their price points are a little bit more fair. And J.D. McKissic is out for this game. He's the main pass catching back, so it does open up some value here for a guy like Antonio Gibson at $6,800. And McKissic was out last week, and it was basically a 60-40. It was like, I think specifically it was like 65% and close to 50% for Brian Robinson. Robinson's going to be the main threat on the ground. Gibson's obviously going to get carries as well, but he's going to be more involved in the passing game, which does make him slightly more valuable. Yes, he's a little bit more expensive, but over a 12% target share in the season. Got to factor in J.D. McKissic was also a thing, but Gibson definitely the better receiving back between the two of these guys, and he's not that much more expensive. And he did play more snaps last week, so Gibson's a guy that I definitely want to try to get to. Projection-wise, he does look like the best point per dollar play of all the running backs on this slate, and that should probably reflect in the optimizer at the end, as I assume he's going to pop up quite a bit. But I do like him a lot here, and the Eagles have been a little bit worse versus the run than they have been versus the pass this year. Very stingy versus the pass, but versus running backs, 27th DVA versus the run, and bottom half in the league in fantasy points allowed per game to the position. So Gibson, I'm liking him quite a bit. Brian Robinson's also in play, but if I had to pick between the two, certainly going to go the Gibson route. And moving back over to our lineup, I don't know how much I can afford yet, so while I like to play Miles Sanders, just not sure I can get there because I'm probably going to try to just jam in A.J. Brown, and that's a good chunk of salary. But Gibson's the guy that did stand out the most to me at $6,800, so we're going to plug him in and we'll talk some pass catchers. And let's start with the Eagles group here first, which is basically a two-man show, although other guys obviously do get snaps. But A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, they're stealing the show. 10-6 for Brown, 8,000 flat for Devonta Smith on DraftKings. And you also see Quez Watkins at $4,200. He played around 50% of the snaps last week. And Zach Pascal at $1,400 played around 30% of these snaps. Now, their volume is very, very low. You just kind of have to hope for a lucky play or a touchdown because volume-wise, they're not going to get you there. They're not going to get peppered with targets or anything. And you have to keep in mind Dallas Goedert's also a pretty key cog in this offense. So these guys are definitely below the total pool. But looking at the numbers for Brown and Devonta Smith this year, Brown's sitting at 8 targets per game on a 30% target share. Also a pretty nice 44% market share of the team's air yards. He's been a stud this season and has been able to find the end zone quite often. Devonta Smith, on the other hand, has not been able to find the end zone quite as often, but still a great player nonetheless. 23% target share in the season. And both have plenty of upside. Smith will definitely be lower owned, and Brown's going to be the preferred target here. He's the alpha dog in this offense, but both are extremely talented. If you're looking for the pivot play in tournaments, go heavier on Smith, but if you're just looking for the overall better play, that would be A.J. Brown, but you are paying a premium for it at nearly $11,000. And like I said, Watkins, Pascal, their dart throws, you just kind of have to hope they score a random touchdown because at $4,200 for Watkins, he's a guy that doesn't even see 1.5 targets per game, so it's really hard to trust that. And then moving on to the Commanders, we have 3 guys that are pretty much going to see the majority of the work. That's going to be Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Dotson is back this week, which I am pretty excited about. Did win me some nice money at the early portion of the season before getting injured. And then you also have like a laundry list of guys that could potentially see some snaps, but it's nothing to really get too excited about. De'Ami Brown, he's a guy that has an insanely high ADOT, so if he catches a bomb, he catches a bomb. If he doesn't, probably not going to do anything at all. And then you have Dax here. You also have Cam Sims, and that really kind of ends the list. Although those guys were playing snaps, but that's when Dotson was out. So I can't really imagine these guys are going to have a huge role by any means. So I'd really kind of stick to either Dotson, Samuel, or Terry McLaurin. And Dotson, man, I want to go back to the well here. I am kind of concerned of, first game back after a hamstring injury, and plus those games were with Carson Wentz, not Taylor Heineke, so maybe the connection isn't going to be as strong. But he was a touchdown scoring machine, and it was quite nice. But for me personally, like I said, I'm prioritizing Eagles for the most part over a lot of these Commanders. So it's really just going to be a thing where I'll see what fits at the end, but I'm not really going to force these guys. So McLaurin in the season, seeing about 6.5 targets per game. Curtis Samuel close to 7. And Dotson, when he was playing, was seeing around 5. The other guys are getting peanuts down here. You really have to hope they do something special with just one play because they're not going to get that many opportunities. So for me personally, like I said, it's just going to be a wait and see approach to see what roster construction I'm going with and whoever fits at the end, because I'm not going to go out of my way to play Terry McLaurin $8,200. They don't project terribly, but I'd rather get my exposure to expensive Eagles like Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Miles Sanders, rather than trying to force into Terry McLaurin. Not saying it's a bad play. I'm just saying personally, I feel better with the Eagles because I think they're going to have many, many more scoring opportunities. And I forgot to mention the matchup, but the Commanders have not been good at all versus wide receivers, and the Eagles second DVA versus the pass and the 10th fewest points allowed per game to the wide receiver position. And moving back over to the lineup, only going to do one thing here for right now. That's going to plug in AJ Brown. I would like to get some of these other wide receivers in, but we'll try to see which one fits at the end. Not going to force anything at the moment, but as of right now, we have Jalen Hurts paired with AJ Brown and then Antonio Gibson, which honestly does work as a run back option just due to the fact that he can't catch the football. So correlation-wise, that doesn't look too bad. And moving on to the tight end position, they kind of made it easy on us because there's two fantasy relevant players here. Start with the Eagles first. Dallas Goedert, $7,800. Looking at his numbers on the season, very solid for a tight end. If you just kind of get Travis Kelce out of your mind and put those numbers to the side, pretty darn good. Some of the best in the league from a tight end. 6 targets per game, 5 catches, 65 yards. Not getting to the end zone too often, but a 21.5% target share, fine matchup versus Washington. If you're just looking for some pass catchers to pair with Jalen Hurts, Goddard's very, very consistent. Catches most of his targets as well. And yes, Jack Stoll's a thing. He's on the field, but seeing less than the target per game, about 37% of the snaps, nothing too crazy. At least I believe it was on 30% of the snaps, if I remember correctly. But either way, you really kind of have to hope for just a random goal line touchdown or something like that, which I never like to bank on. Logan Thomas, $2,600 for the Washington Commanders. He played over 70% of the snaps last week, his second week returning from injury. And then you also have John Bates, who should see somewhat of a similar role as far as snaps are concerned as Jack Stoll. But Logan Thomas at $2,600 is not a terrible play for a guy that can get you a handful of targets and a couple of catches. Even if he doesn't score at $2,600, you don't really need that much. So as far as value plays are concerned, I think Logan Thomas definitely grades out pretty well. And then, of course, my favorite parts of the video, defenses and kickers, always gets me super excited. I don't really think I can play the Commanders' defense no matter what, so I'm going to cross them off. The Eagles' defense, pretty expensive, $6,400, but they've been very good this year. Good matchup, 10.5 point favorite, only 16.5 point implied team total. I got them projected for over 9 points. I guess technically value-wise, the Commanders do grade out a little bit better than that, but I just can't click on them after all the Eagles I'm going to have in my lineup. So Eagles, while they're a little bit expensive, I get it because I could really see them stifling the Commanders' offense in general. And then the kickers, they are what they are. If they hit their field goals, they hit their field goals and become decent value plays. Although I think the Eagles will be in scoring position way more often than the Commanders tonight. He's also playing at home, so knows the stadium well. Jake Elliott, $4,400. Yeah, if I had to pick between the two, he'd be the one I prefer. He is $600 more expensive, but I would try to find a way to make it work. But Joey Sly, he's fine. Like I said, guys, you can't really project field goals to happen, but if they get in range for it, yeah. I mean, if they hit, they hit. If they don't, well, what are you going to do? But they do lack the ceiling that these skill position players have at similar price points. Like, let's say, for example, Logan Thomas. I know he didn't do anything last week, but at a similar price point, even cheaper, at least he has the upside to catch a touchdown or just have multiple catches. These kickers do not. So they're very reliant on how the offense performs and them kind of also sucking by the time they get over the halfway point of the field. And then moving over to our lineup, don't copy and paste this, guys. It's like 2 in the morning. I am tired. I just want to see what fits as we progress through this. And I will be building a 150 lineup, so I don't know which one I'm going to like the most. But we have, let's see, just under $5,000 left for the last couple of spots. I mean, we could go high end if you want to find a punt play, but I don't really feel too comfortable doing that. I feel like I'll end up playing a kicker, so let's just plug in Jake Elliott. That leaves it just under $5,000 for real this time. If you're looking for a value play, I did mention Logan Thomas from the Commanders. I don't think he's terrible if he's going to play 70+% of the snaps at that price point. And going that route leaves you just over $7,000 left, and a guy like Curtis Samuel is there. I have no problem with him. You have the Eagles defense if you feel like 3 Commanders is a bit too much, because don't forget, we also have Antonio Gibson, but several ways you can go here. I'm kind of curious of how much money AJ Brown on the captain spot can save you and what your lineup would look like. So plugging that in, yeah, if we went the similar route, that's $8,100, and you could fit in a guy like Smith and Dallas Goedert. So that's something to certainly consider for sure. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I did want to run the optimizer to see who's popping the most as we talk here. It looks like we got that to crunch already. And well, funny enough, that's actually one of the builds there. was the optimal that's popping right now. I didn't see an AJ Brown captain one. It looks like Jalen Hurts is just getting absolutely jammed in there. So let's hand over to the players tab. And yeah, 93% Jalen Hurts captain. So yeah, looks like it's going to be pretty easy to do that. Jake Elliott in the flex spot. Lots of AJ Brown, Goddard, Gibson, Smith, Samuel, and Logan Thomas. I am not surprised at all of that. So sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't with my opinions there. And it's always nice when they kind of line up. Looking at the statistics here, well, actually I want to look at the teams tab first. It looks like it's definitely going to be Philly heavy with what I kind of figured for the most part, about a 65-35 split. And I mean, Washington, it's just hard because they don't have that much, points predicted to be scored in Vegas. But if we do highlight them, it's probably going to be some of the cheaper guys: Antonio Gibson, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, Robinson. Yeah, it's just a lot of Robinson and Thomas, which I get because paying a premium on any of the commanders, it just doesn't feel like the most right thing to do, especially with their low implied team total. So I'm not seeing too much Terry McLaurin or Taylor Heineke for the most part. They're probably there, just filtered down. So there's a Taylor Heineke lineup. So he's obviously popping a little bit, but just not as much, and kind of what I figured. But with that being said, guys, that's all I got for you in today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything funny you want to tell me, leave those down in the comment section down below. But I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.